Going to get going. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This actually is our first meeting post SB1, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot better mood, not only amongst the commission but amongst the audience. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask for the roll call, please.
Commissioner Burke.
Here.
Commissioner Dunn.
Here.
Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner Gilmedi. Present. Commissioner Gordino. Present. Commissioner Inman. Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
Commissioner Madaffer.
Here.
Commissioner Cavaloni.
Here.
Chair Alvarado.
Yes. Thank you very much. Welcome to the region. We have Mayor Jim Desmond. Mayor Desmond? He is here. Okay. Welcome.
Well, I'm here to welcome you. Thank you very much for the California Transportation Commission, and welcome to the San Diego region. We recognize that you have an enormous responsibility to the state, and we are grateful for the continued collaboration with you and your CTC staff on our region's highest priorities. We are all eager to put the new funds from SB1 to work as soon as possible. We look forward to putting that money to great work with the state transportation funding package. I want to highlight a few of the many exciting programs that we have in the works that the Commission has supported, and with your dollars over the past several years. Hopefully some of you experienced it on the I-5 coming down here. Phase 1 of the North Coast program is now under construction. The Commission allocated funds last June for this multimodal project to upgrade Interstate 5 corridor, which includes a highway, rail, and environmental elements. It's a critical link for the San Diego region. It's carrying goods and services from San Diego to Orange County and to Los Angeles. And also goods moving into the region as well. Goods moving in from the border, also from the port of San Diego that get moved through that I-5 corridor. The State Transportation Agency and Commission has provided funding for additional rail improvements in the corridor, along with a transit and intercity rail program. And 2 of the 3 projects are under construction right now, with a third seeking your support next month. I'll say that again, seeking your support next month in order to break ground on that project later. We've also partnered with the Commission through the Active Transportation Program. In San Diego County, we have over 29 projects right now, representing a total investment over $100 million on comprehensive bike and pedestrian programs. So again, I'd like to welcome you to the San Diego region. Thank you for all your efforts in supporting the region and for your work that you're going to do here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving along. Approval of the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Tavoloni, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 4, commissions for compensation. Motion by Kehoe, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Executive Director's report.
Commissioners, I have quite a few items on my report. I'll make it as quick as I can. First, I wanted to, for the commissioners that were not able to attend the town hall on April 12th and 13th, I have asked Teresa Favila of our staff to provide a brief overview of what transpired. But real quick, this was the town hall that the commission, that was hosted by the Imperial County Transportation Authority on April 12th and 13th in Imperial County. And this was a wonderful experience for the commissioners, very educational and informative. And I would just like to extend my appreciation to Executive Director Mark Baza. And with that, I'll turn it to Teresa to provide a quick overview.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Imperial County Transportation Commission hosted a town hall meeting on April 12th and 13th in the city of Calexico. In addition to the 5 commissioners in attendance, there were local elected officials as well as representatives from Caltrans, SCAG, and many local agencies. On day one, there was a series of presentations which included their active transportation programs, followed by their highway and transit programs, including a presentation from SCAG on their goods movement border crossing study. It was very interesting to learn that the Imperial County's economy is so interdependent with the city of Mexicali. They have an advisory board comprised of U.S. and Mexican agencies to address border infrastructure, economic development, and the environment. On day two, ICTC organized a tour of the Calexico East Port of Entry, followed by a tour of the CHP truck inspection facility, including with a drive-by by the Calexico West Port of Entry. Overall, this town hall was very interesting and very informative. They did a very good job organizing the town hall. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, also as a reminder and for everyone that's here today, the Self-Help Counties is hosting a town hall meeting tomorrow in the same facility at 9 a.m. And just, I would like to extend my appreciation to Keith Dunn as well as all the Self-Help Counties for arranging this town hall, and greatly appreciate it and looking forward to tomorrow. Also, Commissioners, Caltrans, and I'm sure Director Dougherty will speak to this, there was a wonderful event on April 27th for the Caltrans Workers Memorial, and this was really a time out to honor and recognize not only the individuals who have lost their lives carrying out the responsibilities of their jobs, but really all of the Caltrans employees as well as the contractors and the work that they do. And it was just a wonderful event. Commissioner Tavallone attended with myself, and just really it was true memorial. And really, I think Caltrans and the transportation agency should be commended for one more excellent event that just is a take time out to remember those individuals that have lost their lives and those that are out there taking care of all of us. So with that, also wanted to let you know that Caltrans and Commission staff will be holding a let's see if I have it here on what day. We will be holding an asset management plan development workshop on June 14th, 2017 to continue the process of developing an asset management plan. That meeting will be held in District 4 from 8 to 12. We also, Commissioners, have a legislative roundtable that is taking place next week on the 23rd. And you all, we've provided you information on that, but that will be held in Sacramento, and we have a great deal of participation at that roundtable. Before you, you have a calendar, a commission calendar for meetings that staff is proposing for 2018. I would like to propose a couple of amendments to that calendar. We have received invitations for a town hall to be held in September in the vicinity of Hollister or Salinas. We would also like to add a town hall to be held in Sonoma to cover Lake and Mendocino issues as well in the spring of April 2018. And with those changes, staff would recommend your approval of the 2018 meeting calendar.
Motion by Modafer, second by Tavallone. Questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay, Commissioners, in order for the Commission staff to ensure that we are fully informed of environmental justice issues, public health issues, and social equity issues, want to let the Commission know that we have Deputy Director Thronson and myself have held one meeting or participated in one meeting with the environmental justice community. It was held on May 10th, and it was a very informative meeting, and we will continue. We are hoping to hold 2 additional meetings, one in Southern California and one in the Bay Area. And it's just been a very informative, very meaningful. And as we conclude those 2 additional meetings, we will report back to you on what we learn. And then finally, Commissioners, as you are all aware, Senate Bill 1 was passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, and this is a celebration time. And just really want to take time out to recognize our leaders in transportation. The governor, Senator Bell, Assemblymember Frazier. It's a true celebration and testament to your leadership and hard work. And I would like to just recognize also Secretary Kelly. We have in the audience Janet Dawson and Randy Chin, and just really want to take this time out to celebrate and recognize them.
There you go, there you go.
And I would be remiss not to recognize the commissioners. I know that for decades, this commission has recommended that there be a solution to the transportation funding problems that we all face. And with that, watching this whole process go through, I just want to recognize each and every one of you as well for your efforts in getting this bill passed. It's a testimony to just the teamwork that took place among everyone. And with that, Commissioners, on the agenda today is an SB1 implementation plan. I want to assure you that staff is doing everything that we can to move SB1 forward as expeditiously as possible, but also taking great care in ensuring that the Commission carries out its responsibilities, not only for programming and allocating funding, but also for the accountability requirements that are set forth in SB1. And with that, I wanted to let you know that I've had meetings with Secretary Kelly, Senator Bell, Assemblymember Frazier, and staff. And I just want to thank those individuals and their staff for their commitment to partner with me and the Commission in carrying out the accountability requirements associated with Senate Bill 1. That partnership is critical to us moving forward, and I just greatly appreciate that partnership. Can't tell you how much. And then with that, I want to mention that we are planning a kickoff event on June 8th and 9th to begin the implementation process for the guideline development, and we will provide additional information moving forward after this meeting and have information on our website. And lastly, Commissioners, I would seek your approval for staff to issue letters from the Commission to the Governor, Senator Bell, Frazier, Secretary Kelly, and others, that just to recognize and thank them for their efforts in passing Senate Bill 1.
So moved, if you need a motion on that.
Motion by Gardino, second by Christine Keough. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Any commission reports?
Thank you, Chair Alvarado. Just a couple of quick things. One, also thanks to the Imperial County folks. It was great, and I've gotten a lot of feedback on how appreciative they are of our commission for visiting. So I would encourage any of you in the audience, when we do go out to our town halls, to come with us, because it really reminds us how vast and how different our state is, and so appreciate that. Also, I just returned from DC. I was there for Infrastructure Week. There's much debate on what Infrastructure Week outline might look like, but most of the folks in the know think we will see some one-pager. The good news is, on the legislative side of the hill, there are at least 4 different proposals covering different aspects of what funding future might look like. So I would encourage all of you to stay tuned. I'm guessing that, you know, it's kind of behind some of the other issues that they're trying to work on, but we do need to be involved when it does move, and if it moves quickly. So just stay tuned with that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Secretary Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I first want to say thank you for the recognition on the development and the passage of SB 1, and really I want to expand or express my own gratitude, not just to the Commission, which is an entity that did a phenomenal job on educating the public and members of the legislature and others about the condition we found ourselves in after not touching the gas tax for 28 years in California, and how far that left us behind on taking care of the assets that are so important to our economy, and the future of this state. So I want to first express my gratitude to you all for being part of that important partnership. Secondly, I can't say enough about the leadership of the two chairmen of the policy committees in the legislature. Assemblymember Frazier, Senator Bell picked up this mantle 2+ years ago. What started as conversations and sort of a hope became a want and a desire to get something big and important done, and then persistence to see it through. And both Senator Bell and Assemblymember Frazier did tremendous work, and I want to acknowledge you here and thank you for that. Thank you for that leadership. Finally, there's a whole group of people in this room that are part of a broad coalition that includes, labor, environmental organizations, local governments, regions, cities, others who were part of a broad coalition that came around and really helped deliver SB 1 through the legislative process. And to all of you in the room who participated in that coalition, again, I want to extend my gratitude and say thank you. It's a very important and big thing we did for transportation in California in terms of finally, after nearly 30 years, aligning dedicated revenue, stable dedicated revenue to addressing our transportation infrastructure for decades to come. That's a big public policy accomplishment. And so again, I want to thank everybody for that work. I also want to just emphasize now what I would call sort of the joyful challenge in front of us. The challenge now is to implement that program. And it's a big program, and there's a lot of work to do, and there are dollars that will flow directly to cities and counties to fix local streets and roads, fix local bridges, improve their communities. There's dollars that will flow to the department for maintenance and rehabilitation and important work to improve assets that have been ignored for too long. And then there are 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 programs that will come through this commission that will fund larger competitive through competitive programs, fund larger capacity increasing projects. And that work is going to be very important for this commission. And I want to say here that you have the support of the administration and all the assistance we can provide to move through the guideline process that's in the legislation, so that we can move dollars to the great need that's out there as soon as possible. So again, I want to commend everybody and thank everybody for the work and tell you that we're here to help, and I'm really looking forward to what I think is the hardest part of this, and that is implementing this program, getting these dollars to work, and rebuilding California. But we're excited about it. We have a great opportunity in front of us, and I can't tell you how happy I am to be in this position and about to embark on this journey. So it's a great opportunity. I look forward to working with you on it in the weeks and days to come. So thank you.
Any questions of the Secretary? Director Totri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also going to add to the chorus of congratulations on SB 1, but I'll try to be brief. Much has been said, and it's been said very well. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Senator Bell and Assemblymember Frazier, Secretary Kelly, and many folks in the room. I think the best way to describe it is literally an investment of blood, sweat, and tears to be able to get to where we are with SB 1. I believe it passed on April 6th around 10:30 at night. I can tell you on April 7th, Friday morning, probably 7 a.m., we were beginning at the department to try to figure out how to meet the expectations that are going to be there with SB 1 and deliver on the commitments that we made on SB 1 to be able to take care of our infrastructure. To put a scale factor on it, depending on how many dollars SB 1 leverages, comparing it to Prop 1B and how many dollars were leveraged on that, over a 10-year period, SB 1 may be a double the investment that Prop 1B was. And that puts a good scale factor on it as far as what the opportunity and the challenge in front of us is, and it's ongoing. And we're already working very diligently to start to execute the delivery of those projects as quick as possible. But our efforts have already begun, even though the dollars don't start to flow till later this year. There's trailer bill language out there that gives us some additional tools to be able to deliver projects on CMGC and design build and others. And we've already started to move forward on an accelerated bridge program, and that's later on your agenda to approve projects for up to 22 bridges, and that's just the beginning of that effort, and that's just a few examples. Your executive director mentioned our annual Caltrans Workers Memorial, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of that. This year, it was a very somber event, as it always is, but a first-class event, and we honored Ore Lopez from District 7, Randy Wisenhunt, and then also Annette Brooks, who died in the line of duty just over the last year. That brings our total, unfortunately, to 187 Caltrans employees who have lost their lives in the line of duty since 1921. So certainly it's an opportunity for us to recognize them, support their families, but also reinforce safety for our employees and also the motoring public. Just a quick update on storm damage, not necessarily increase in numbers or damage sites, but we are continuing to fix all the different locations that we had impeded. We're down to about 11 locations that we're still working on throughout the state. We had at one point 44 routes closed at the peak. But I will share that we're continuing to address the financial implications of that damage. And it's in the neighborhood of $860 million. That's on your agenda later on. The federal government, FHWA, only has about $100 million a year to disperse for damage. So we already, before we got into this winter, had a backlog of $500 million from prior damages and emergencies that we were waiting on from the Federal Highway Administration, and now we add on almost $1 billion. We are corresponding with our congressional delegation as well as our senators, requesting their support in including an FHWA emergency relief funding sometime in this fiscal year, taking advantage of any opportunities so that we can catch up on that reimbursement, not only what's in past years, but what's in this winter because of the significance of the dollar amount. A couple of other items. We had a planning conference earlier this month on May 3rd through 5th, which was very well attended. I was very happy to see the participants there, FHWA, Federal Transit Administration, different state agencies, local agencies, universities. So it was very well attended, and I just wanted to make a note of that. It was also mentioned that it is National Infrastructure Week, so you can mark that on your calendar. It is also, May is also Bike Month, and consistent with that or coordinating with that, we will be putting out the first state bike and ped plan in its final form. Probably this week. It's going through just some minor editing and formatting, and then that will be posted, so watch for that. And then also it was mentioned that there's a workshop in the next of the series of the Transportation Asset Management Plan on June 14th, and that's in the Bay Area, and I wanted to make sure that that was on your radar as well. I think I will end my comments and see if there's any questions. Thank you very much for the time.
Any question to the director? No? Want to speak? Okay, Mr. Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just acknowledge the staff and our teams on the Senate and the Assembly and the Governor's Office and the Secretary's staff. The synergy that came together to make this work was a lot of late nights, a lot of willingness to compromise and make sure that this portfolio package worked for most people in California. And I will tell you that I think one of the biggest inspirations I had was seeing the disappointment on this commission's face when they had to defund the STIP. And that was just another, and I have to thank you very much for hanging in there and thinking that the possibility would come to fruition. But none of this would have happened without the absolute dedication of our staffs. They held it in together, me throwing fits, and just it was just a perfect storm that came together. I will tell you that after 2 years, 4 months, and 6 days, and who's counting, that we went into recess directly after that. And I didn't know what to do with myself that whole week. I didn't leave the house because I had been working on this, Brian and I, all that time. So We're slowly getting back up to speed. Fran will be very happy that we're going to concentrate on freight and going forward, looking at that dynamic now and how we can be helpful to the freight industry in California. But you know, look at all the bikes that will be sold in California now with all that ATP money. So thinking we're going to do some good stuff, and I'm really excited about what this commission will do as far as getting it out there into the public. But again, kudos to everybody involved. Thank you.
Sure.
I would like to just say one thing. I was privileged to attend a couple of the meetings that that we had in the Inland Empire, and I'd also like for us all to thank the governor, Senator De Leon, and Speaker Rendon for all of their time and effort to help. And without them, I think we would have had a tough time, because they did an excellent job at all the stops that they did up and down the state. So I think we ought to really give them a round of applause for what they took all their time to do.
We're here, we're already here. We'll just invite him up. Who wants to speak?
Just one other comment very briefly on this, and I think Secretary Kelly mentioned it earlier today. Local streets and road money are effectively going to double by 100% as a result of SB 1. And I know there's a lot of concern out there. You hear about recalls, you hear about... The reality is this is going to put money into every community, in every county, in every city, throughout the entire state of California, unlike anything that has ever been contemplated in probably, 3 decades or more. And it's going to be huge. So those folks that may not be happy that the thing passed, I'm sure they're going to be happy spending the money to fill the potholes and fix the roads that are so desperately needed. And I again, echo all of the positive comments made.
Okay, and what we're kind of did here was just kind of slip back into commissioner reports. I guess we must have been overly excited about this whole thing. So under commissioner reports, Randy, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Senator Bell asked me to come to say share a few of his thoughts on his behalf regarding SB 1. And similar to the comments from Secretary Kelly, we really think there's two important things to keep in mind here. And the first one is we'd urge you to act with a sense of urgency in putting the money out the door, getting the guidelines done, and getting projects visible, and fixing the problems that we all know are really horrible in this state. So please act with a sense of urgency if you can at all. And we know the staff has started on this, and we think you're up to a good start. Secondly, we'd also ask you to act with a sense of stewardship about this money. We call it SB 1, but really the formal title of the bill is the Road Repair and Accountability Act. And we're looking to the CTC to hold the agencies accountable, both the state agencies and the local agencies accountable for spending the money. As I said, we think that you're off to an auspicious start. We want to compliment the staff for their initial work and for their communication with us in the Senate. We want you to view us as partners, and we can help you as you begin this long road of implementing these many programs. As the inevitable questions and concerns come up, please contact us, because we want to be able to help you to spend the money efficiently, effectively, and appropriately. Senator Bell will share his thoughts with you at a future commission meeting, but until then, thank you for letting me come and share this with you.
Thank you. Any questions? Very good. Back on track. Mr. Mamano.
I'll get you back on track. Easy. I'm good for getting people back off track. Congratulations on SB 1. And I also had the opportunity to join Malcolm at the Workers' Memorial, and that's such a beautiful event. I'd never been to anything like that in my career in Federal Highway. I've seen versions of that, but what always has impressed me here since I've moved to California is the family that is really not just Caltrans, but the family that is transportation in California. And I know the recognition that you have at that also of contractors and other and consultants and other people who are involved in that, and the awareness that that brings to the traveling public, because I think I've heard the advertisements that you had going up to that. I heard more about that at the gym. You may not look like it, but I do go to a gym, and but at the gym and at the store and other places at church and things like that, where people were saying, "Hey Vince, I heard about this Workers' Memorial. I heard about this worker," and it really brought a lot of attention to just my peers and friends of mine, and so it's handled very beautifully. I've always been very impressed with that. So, but congratulations on SB1. So for us, Federal Highway. We bring in a little bit more money. Also, we had the omnibus appropriations bill was passed. So remember, we have FAST Act. That's our 5-year authorization. Then we get our yearly. This is the appropriations. This is how much you're actually going to be able to spend towards that. We've been spending at 2016 levels since FAST Act passed, and we've just gotten appropriations that funds us to the end of September, which is the end of the federal fiscal year, at FAST Act level. So it's 2017 FAST Act level. So that's quite a bump in the dollar amount. So there's quite a lot of money coming into transportation right now in California. A couple other things that came along with that is the repurposing of earmarks. Many people here will definitely remember the repurposing of the earmarks that we had an exercise done at the end of last federal fiscal year. This new appropriations has done that again, so we're going to be able to do more repurposing, and that it also extended it from the previous repurposing that we did was 50-mile radius from that site, and now it's been extended to a 100-mile radius. So that's going to add a lot of distance to it and give a lot more opportunity for other types of projects. It'll all be Title 23 type projects that repurposing can go to. But, so we'll work with Caltrans on getting that information out to the locals and identifying those earmarks. We haven't gone through that process on which earmarks are available at the moment to repurpose, but we'll go through that process with Caltrans, and I'm sure it'll be brought up at this meeting. Been a little bit more money. Malcolm talked a little bit about ER, so appropriations added additional money to ER. The way the ER program works is it's $100 million. So in the law, it's $100 million an event and $100 million per year for federal highway. So that's how much money that goes into federal highway appropriations every year for emergency relief around the country. So what happens often is we'll get an additional amount of money that's brought in from the general fund. So the Highway Trust Fund funds that. And then that's money that doesn't count towards your formula money. So California gets a certain amount of money every year based on a formula. ER money is not included in that formula. So that's like separate money. It's not free money to California, but it's in addition to that. Most of the time it's anywhere between 100 and in California it's about 88% portion. So if it's an emergency opening, we got to get it open. We got to get rescue there. Utilities there to get people in and out. That would be 100%. And then we have the permanent restoration, and sometimes it's very complex, which is what I call job security, because I'm usually the only one that knows it, so yay. And I'll tell you just a little bit at a time so you don't get cocky. So the way the program works is if you're going to, say a bridge washes out, and you're going to put a bridge back in, you could do gravel and a Bailey bridge on the side to get traffic around it while you're building that bridge. That would all be 100%. When you go to put that bridge in, that would come in at the pro rata share, which was about 88% here, and 88 federal and the rest state or local. I-10 bridge, for instance, it was best determined to put that bridge back. We weren't going to go around, we were just going to put it back. So when we put that back, That was done at the pro rata share because that's the permanent restoration. It wasn't going to be taken out and thrown away, it was going to be left
Actually,
there.
Vincent, that's still a temporary bridge. You owe us money.
Yeah, it's always temporary. I'll give you that. So the way that's how the program works. The biggest thing I would encourage to all the locals here, because Malcolm mentioned, you're looking at over $1 billion in state dollars, and you're going to be looking at over 500, 600, 700 million in local dollars also. And the biggest thing I want to make sure and impress upon everybody is work with Caltrans district offices on a local event. If you've got an emergency, there's several different events. I think we got 3 or 4 different events that we're calling. So there's some things that tie it to when you can open. I mean, when you can, where the money goes to, what event it's going to be charged to, and whether or not you can go out and do this work or that work. The biggest thing is talk with your district office immediately. If there's any questions about it, we can bring Federal Highway into it. But the district offices are the key to understanding that ER program. But we did, over the winter events, we had some quick release money, $10 million that came for quick release money. It's a drop in the bucket for the total amount, but it's money that we can get to early. But generally, it's a reimbursable program. So we're going to get these site locations coming in, list of projects, put together a program of projects, and then as they come along, we'll be able to try and fund those if there's funding available in the ER program nationally. So right now, like I said, the Appropriations Act added some money to the ER program, but it didn't cover all of the backlog. So that's kind of the dance we have to do. So there have been times where states have waited 3, 4, 5 years for any ER money because it was depleted. The program was depleted, and then something like a Hurricane Sandy that came through, which had huge dollar amounts, Congress had a separate appropriations for that. So there's a lot of different things that happen with the ER money and the way that ER funding works. But the biggest thing I want to try and impress to everybody is work with Caltrans. Don't go out there and put in the permanent restoration without making sure they're on the same page with you. Because we've had in the past to say, no, we can't use the ER money on this because you didn't do the environmental work that needed to be done. You didn't get a couple other things taken care of. So I want to impress that upon everybody. I think that's all I got. I think Clark Paulson is going to talk a little bit more about the ER program too. So
We have a question for you, Vincent.
Hey, Vince. Okay,
I didn't see at the barber today. What was going on? You look like a
as
hippie.
you can see, I'm letting it grow.
You look like a hippie.
I'm letting it grow.
Hippies.
The repurposing exercise, can you further elaborate, put a timetable around that? Do you know when?
I don't have that.
Okay, you
Yeah,
don't have it yet.
so this just came out last week, or
Okay.
a couple weeks ago. So we're in the process of putting that together. First, the way it'll work is we have to identify the projects.
Sure.
First and
Right.
foremost. And then it's a local decision. We work with Caltrans. Caltrans work with locals to determine which projects are going to be put into that. It's not a federal decision, that's all local. So it took us a little time last year to get the projects, make sure we had them correctly identified. So I mean, I would, if I'm guessing, it would be done by the end of this fiscal year, but I haven't seen the legislation specifically to say that it had to be done by the end of this
If I
fiscal
recall
year.
the exercise last time, it started with a list that you all developed.
Correct.
And so however long it takes to go through the conversation, that may be some time, but do you have a sense of the timeline of the list, the initial list?
They're working on that right now, and
Okay.
that's something I know California is working on too. So Caltrans is working on that list also, so it's kind of a team effort on, because we'll bring that to you, and you may have some in there that you think California thinks actually should be on that list, so. But as soon as I find that out, I'll make sure you guys get that list.
Further questions?
Yes.
Lucy?
Thanks, Vince. Further down in our report, we're going to be kind of reviewing some of the emergency funds from the big storm events that we've had in California, and it's way up into, $1 billion plus. And I've learned that it is not unusual for reimbursements of this type to take over many years, and you just said that. when you're talking about hurricane levels of funding here, where we can easily absorb all of the money that would be allocated throughout the nation, and we don't even have a bottom to this hole.
Right.
It could be well into $1.5 billion or more, because they're just, when
They're still finding things out.
they're still finding
Yeah.
stuff out, right? Should we be thinking about our delegation pulling together a strategy to look for an additional augmentation or a line item in a budget, or should we just be patient and wait this process out?
So thank you, Malcolm, because I'm not allowed to answer that question. So Malcolm, why don't you answer that question?
We've already submitted letters to our congressional delegation and senators' offices to look for appropriation opportunities this fiscal year. We can share those letters with your staff, and they can share them with you. We've already are trying to work several different angles at any opportunity for them to catch up with the emergency dollars, including this winter's storms.
So ultimately, to answer your question, as neutrally as I can, in order to put more money into the ER program, more than the $100 million a year, it takes an act of Congress. So Congress would have to add more money to it. It's not Federal Highway's ability to say, let's put more money. So it's $100 million a year every year, and after that, it's if anything more needs to go into it, people want that to go into it, that's not the discretion of the agency, that's Congress's discretion.
I thank you. I'm fascinated because I don't always have great confidence that our, 54 delegates act in a unified voice sometime for California, but there are so many folks, both also watching online, plus the business groups that know how important infrastructure funding is from the feds, that our business groups that do make these regular trips to Washington, D.C. have an ask that could help our state and federal partners. So Malcolm, that's something that it would be helpful to get that information out to those of us in our day jobs. From San Francisco to San Diego, we all make regular trips, and it would be nice to add that to the list.
We'll share those correspondence that we sent in, and I can also add that we also followed those up with phone calls to staffers in both congressional houses to talk about those opportunities and give them an update as to the storm damage that we experienced in California.
And from a processing of that, the other piece of that is make sure you're talking to Caltrans and work through Caltrans, because I say that, I've had some people came to me and gave me a lot of credit for getting one thing opened, and I said, I didn't do anything. Well, I took credit for it because I do that, but all I did was talk to the Caltrans district, and they said, okay, we'll go look at it, and they looked at it and went, yeah, of course we can do that. So they came to me, and what they needed to do was go to Caltrans, because I went to Caltrans. They're the ones that are going to implement that program.
Stephen?
And Commissioner Dunn, just to let you know, under agenda item 54, staff will be presenting a letter that we expect to be approved to be sending to the congressional delegation addressing just this particular issue. And we did receive the Caltrans letters that Caltrans sent out to the delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you.
Okay, Kenneth, regional agencies.
Thank you, Commissioners. Kenneth Cow, MTC. I'm representing the regional agencies today. I wanted to start first with the federal stuff that Vince just mentioned. The federal omnibus bill includes the earmarks repurposing, but it also includes a rescission at the end of this fiscal year. So we're going to be working closely with Caltrans to ensure that the appropriate amounts of money are rescinded from our state and the pain is as less as possible. Also on the emergency relief, the ER stuff, we have over $500 million in local streets and roads damage as a result of the recent storms, and that number may go up. I believe Clark will be covering that later, so definitely we are very affected, and we are working closely with Caltrans to ensure that those will be reimbursed appropriately. Moving on to the state, again, I wanted to join in with the echoes of congratulations and gratitude for the passage of SB 1. I will save a number of my comments for the item itself, but I did want to thank Secretary Kelly's comments to recognize not only the legislature and the governor's office and the commission, but also the regional agencies. I know a lot of our regional agencies were tireless in going up to the legislature and telling them about our needs and the state of our roads and our transit systems. And so I also wanted to thank him for those comments. I will mention two items related to SB1. First, the 2018 STIP, which got a great shot in the arm for stable funding. You have the fund estimate assumptions on your agenda this month, and that will include the SB1 numbers. We actually do look forward to that, to actually programming new projects rather than deleting projects, as was the case last year. And we've also been working with your staff to look at the guidelines, which will be coming to you in draft form next month. The next item I did want to mention was the California Freight Investment Program. I wanted to say that we understand that the trailer bill language includes the CFIP and the freight and the SB1, 300 million kind of lumped in together, so that guidelines will likely be delayed. But we did want to appreciate CTC staff for all the hard work. They've held, I don't know, 6 or 7 workshops around the state over the last 6-7 months. It was a really great, open, transparent process. We have a great working relationship with your staff, and I wanted to, again, thank them for that work, and we look forward to even more workshops coming up in the future. I think by now, CTC staff is fast becoming an expert at developing guidelines, and we want to, and they'll be leveraging that expertise coming up very soon. We understand that there'll be a number of workshops coming up as soon as early June, and so the regional agencies will be there, will be participating, and will be giving our input very soon. So thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you. Maura?
Good morning, Commissioners. Mara Toomey, the Rural Counties Task Force. The Rural Counties met on May 12th and discussed the following issues and concerns. In regard to SB1, the Rural Counties, as well as everyone else, want to thank the Commission, Senator Bell, Assemblyman Frazier, and Secretary Kelly for their tireless efforts to pass this landmark transportation legislation. As the Commission works to implement SB1, the Rural Counties urge the Commission to consider balance, benefits, costs, equity, and accountability in developing program guidelines, especially the balance between formula and competitive programs, to ensure full participation across all regions of the state. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarkis?
Morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Assemblyman Frazier. Here I am today to provide the Self-Help Counties Coalition update. Sarkis Kachek with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. Keith Dunn is on his way from the airport, but I'm here to pinch hit for him. And there he is. Okay.
And there he is.
Carry on. I'll carry on because we have a full agenda for you guys today. But again, thank you to the state for your leadership in the passage of SB1. We are celebrating the passage along with everyone else in the state. We'll be supporting the administration's trailer bill language, which will allow expanded use of project delivery tools for the state of California, and we will be actively participating in the development of the SB1 guidelines. We will be commenting on the state-local partnership program later on today's agenda. We feel as though that using the Proposition 1B state-local partnership model would be great use for this new SB1 program. The second item is related to the FAA tax issue. We are still working on this issue. We've been meeting with the Governor's Office, Department of Finance, agency, and congressional staff to discuss the potential legislative solutions. We've been reaching out to delegations from other states, and we feel as though we're making progress on identifying the significance of this on our local sales tax measures. And finally, as Executive Director Branson mentioned in her report, we are looking forward to tomorrow's CTC Self-Help Counties Coalition Town Hall meeting. Here in this room, we look forward to discussing opportunities to partner with your commission with delivering critical infrastructure improvements in California. And with that, I will conclude the update, and I'd be happy to take any questions, or if Keith would like to answer any questions also.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, now we're going to get into policy matters, and as everybody's noticed, we've got a pretty full agenda today. So we're going to implement WIP and ZIP. WIP is my job. ZIP, if you got something to say that's important, say it. If somebody's already said it, just agree with it. Are we ready? All right, WIP and ZIP. I'm going to start with item 13. Garth.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Tab 13 is an informational item on innovations in transportation. Antoinette Meyer, the Transportation Demand Program Manager with the San Diego Association of Governments, along with Lolly Sangster from the City of Carlsbad, are here to discuss their efforts relating to the Transportation Demand Management, or TDM, demonstration program currently underway by SANDAG. In conjunction with the City of Carlsbad. SANDAG recently partnered with the City of Carlsbad to put these resources into practice through demonstration projects that will result in the region's first local TDM ordinance and a comprehensive parking management program aimed at advancing the City of Carlsbad's goals for economic development, mobility, and sustainability. And with that, turn it over to Antoinette and Lolly.
Good morning. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's an honor to be able to give you a very brief presentation on the success that we're having in the San Diego region with expanding transportation demand management through local partnerships. My name is Antoinette Meyer. I'm a principal planner at SANDAG, and I manage our transportation demand management program, which is known here locally as iCommute. And iCommute, not unlike regional TDM programs around the state, offers a variety of services that reduces drive-alone trips in our region. So for example, we have a very successful subsidized van pool program. We work with hundreds of the largest employers across the region to develop commuter benefit programs for their employees. We have a guaranteed ride home service. We have Bike to Work Day tomorrow in the San Diego region. And we offer support for transit and shared mobility services. So TDM is one of the most cost-effective means for reducing traffic congestion, and it's also very flexible and can easily adapt to changing market conditions or changing communities. So for this reason, our regional transportation plan invests in a very robust TDM strategy that includes both traditional TDM programs that you're already familiar with, but that also leverages technology and emerging mobility services to expand transportation choices in our region. This investment in TDM really pays off. It reduces VMT significantly and contributes to a 33% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. However, SANDAG realizes that to meet these ambitious goals, we can't go at it alone. We need support at the local level. We need our member agencies to be engaged in promoting TDM. So we do this by providing support for local jurisdictions with TDM planning, policy development, and helping them to build the capacity and expertise for TDM program implementation. So this starts with education. SANDAG has developed a guidebook and training series for local jurisdictions on integrating TDM into the planning and development process. Successful TDM starts with multimodal plans, policies, and development practices. So this resource provides best practices, and we have a corresponding workshop series that we've delivered with several of our member agencies that walks them through the process of designing customized TDM programs for different development types and different communities. Also at SANDAG, we consider parking management to be one of the most effective TDM strategies. If parking is free, plentiful, and unmanaged, driving alone becomes a much more attractive option than transportation alternatives. So we developed a web-based interactive parking management toolbox that helps our member agencies design data-driven parking management plans. This toolbox is not alone. We also offer technical support to our member agencies to put this plan into action. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to our partner, Lolly Sangster from the City of Carlsbad, to talk to you about how both these resources and a partnership with SANDAG to provide technical support is helping them to reach their own ambitious goals related to mobility and sustainability.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon, or good morning, should I say. In the City of Carlsbad, we knew that the only way we could meet our regional goals was to work at a regional level. So we reached out to SANDAG, knowing that they had tools in place. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, and we decided we would work collaboratively together. We've also been reaching out to NCTD, our local cities, as well as the businesses within the City of Carlsbad. So what we wanted to do, we wanted to work together to do mode shift. And to do that, we knew that we had to come at it from multiple approaches. Currently in the city of Carlsbad, we have 23% of the travelers that are not driving alone, and we wanted to improve that another 10%. Now, in order to do that, we knew that we were just about at build out, so we had to come up with a two-tiered approach. We put 40% of our effort where we're going to try to get 40% of the current businesses that are being under development in the city of Carlsbad to put infrastructure and programs in place for TDM. And then as the businesses that were there have their business license renewal, we wanted them to also participate in TDM. The best way to do that was to make it easy for them. So we kind of approach it with a concierge service. We tap into the services of iCommute and what Sandag is working on. We are there to help them answer questions, and we're making it convenient, affordable, and readily at their fingertips, because if they know about it, there's a better chance they're going to change their behavior and start participating in kind of the new frontier of how to travel and get around the city of Carlsbad. We consider this improving quality of life. So what we've done is we looked at TDM, but we knew that in order to get people out of their cars, we had to have a way for them to park their cars. We wanted to make the most of our parking in Carlsbad, so if you look at the picture on the bottom, we have focused in the Village and Barrio area. We consider these areas very unique with different interests and different goals. So what we did is we looked at what we had in common, and within the three regions, it is the village areas in the pink, the barrio is in the green, and part of the coastal corridor is in the blue. In the thick bars that we have, that is where we're looking at shared parking, because we knew if we could maximize the parking that we had, we didn't have to add additional parking. We knew that there was an opportunity to make it more available, convenient for the residents and the visitors and those who work in Carlsbad. Of course, once you do park, we got to make sure you can get around the city, and that's where TDM so closely aligns with our parking management strategy. Both of these projects will be working together. The parking management plan is going out to the public this summer, and then we'll go to the council for their consideration. The TDM ordinance is going out to the public in May of 2018, which is next year. But we will be doing a lot of public outreach and engagement with our local businesses because it's a group effort. I mean, we all bring this project to the finish line together, and it's something we want to be successful at doing. We're very appreciative for Sandag and our local communities, as well as the neighboring cities, for making this happen. We're happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 14, Eric.
Good morning, Commissioners. Let's see, am I close enough? So for the State and Legislative Matters book item, we will be covering a few things. First, because this book item is a white, and you guys got the list on April 28th of the bills that we are tracking, I wanted to update you on some bills of interest and where they're at today. First of all, AB 515, the Fraser bill that we are in support, that you have been in support of, is on the Assembly floor on consent. AB 1282, which is a Levine bill, is on the Assembly's appropriation suspense file. AB 174, the Bigelow bill that requires a commissioner to represent a rural county, is already in the Senate. It has been passed out of the Assembly. And AB 179, the Cervantes bill that requires one commissioner to represent environmental justice and social equity issues, is on the Assembly floor. Finally, SB 4, the Mendoza bill that it includes putting at one time, hundreds of millions of dollars on the ballot for a bond measure for freight. It did at one time include money for the CTC to allocate for freight infrastructure projects. That bill was significantly amended in Senate Appropriations last week. Now it is, and it's on the suspense file in Senate Appropriations, but now it actually doesn't include the CTC at all. All of the bond funds that would be raised would go to the ARB for clean freight type projects, and the language that was in the bill that related to the Trade Corridors Improvement Fund language for this money and other state and federal freight dollars was all taken out of it because it's being addressed in a trailer bill. So SB 4, while it has been a bill that we've been monitoring very closely, is much more tangentially related to our business today. So if you have questions on that bill, please let me know. Second, staff is requesting that the commission take support positions on 4 bills, and you can find those 4 bills beginning on page 3 of the book item. 4 measures, really. I would like to add another measure to the or to the request to make it actually 5. ACA 5, Fraser's constitutional amendment, was passed in April and has actually been chaptered, and that's the reason it actually isn't in the book item. But I do believe that the Commission wants to strongly communicate its support of this concept, and ACA 5 puts on the ballot for November of 2018 constitutional protections for the revenues in SB 1 that were raised that aren't already protected by Article 19. So that is added to the list of the 4 that are in your book item. So there would actually be 5 measures that staff will be asking you to take a support position on. ACA 5, SCA 6, while we're on constitutional amendments, is a Wiener constitutional amendment by Senator Wiener that lowers the voter threshold for self-help measures from 2/3 to 55%. This is similar to measures that the Commission has supported in the past. There is AB 1218 is an Obernolte bill that extends the CEQA exemption for bicycle infrastructure and bicycle transportation plans that is already in current law. This would extend that exemption for those types of projects. That is very similar to a recommendation that the CTC made in their annual report this past year. AB 1324 is Assemblymember Gloria's bill, which allows for localized self-help measures so that they don't have to be county-wide but can be city or any partition of a county that can put up for voter support the ability to raise revenues for transportation purposes, and those revenues would then be dedicated to that partitioned jurisdiction that voted for it. And finally, AB 1633, another Fraser bill, relates to the highway signs that you see along the highways at various exits. The blue signs you're familiar with that say food, exit A, or exit number, or lodging, or gas, fuel. This would add a 4th type of sign for Caltrans to erect that would identify businesses nearby with electric vehicle charging facilities. And in this way, I understand the Assembly member, and he could speak to it himself, I'm sure, but he's trying to create private incentive for the private market to invest in electric vehicle charging facilities, because there is some advantage to having your business's name on a sign along the highway to encourage electric vehicles to pull off and perhaps come to your Arby's or your Wendy's because you have an electric vehicle charging facility, as opposed to the Burger King or the McDonald's that might be down the road that doesn't have one. And in this way, it incentivizes through the private market the investment in infrastructure for electric vehicle charging. And with that, those are the 5 measures that the staff is asking the Commission to take a support position on. If you have questions on any of those, please let me know. And finally, in case anyone is curious and has not actually read about SB 1 yet, there is a short summary of SB 1 at the back of this book item, if that is helpful to all of you. And with that, that is all of my comments. Please let me know if you have any questions. I know I went through them quickly, but I'm trying to keep up with the whip and zip process.
Which one do I push on?
You're on.
Okay, great. First of all, to Mr. Frazier, a great idea on the electric vehicle signage. Just for everyone's information, all 3 of the industrial utilities in the state have pilot projects approved for multi-hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in electric vehicle charging. So I hope there's coordination on what signage is going to look like, because we're going to see a big bloom across the state in the next 1 to 3 years. So I don't know if you can work that in or not.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Jim.
Oh.
Lucy, then Jim.
Eric, can you talk a little bit more about SCA 6 Wiener bill? We've already got 24 counties that have approved it at 2/3 vote. Is there a reason we have to take a position on this when this is going to the voters? And I'm struggling with whether I can support that.
Yes, Commissioner. So this would propose to put it on the ballot. This would change the voter threshold
To 55%.
to 55% for measures on a ballot. In the past, the commission has been supportive of this, primarily because we've desperately needed transportation dollars, and in any way we could make it easier for transportation dollars to be raised, the commission was supportive. There are challenges to this, of course, but it has been this would essentially put this language on the ballot for the voters to approve the ability to the change in the Constitution for then self-help counties to have a lower voter threshold to meet. This doesn't actually lower the voter threshold because it is in the Constitution right now what that threshold is. So it would still require a large investment in those who want to support this change in order for it to get to get the support it needs in the state on the ballot. So there are arguments against trying to do this. However, in the past, as I mentioned, the commission has always been supportive of ways in which we can make it easier to raise transportation dollars.
Like Stanislaus continues to lose by like 0.5 percentage point. So we'll give those guys a shot.
Is there a reason for the push on this year? I know the need is tremendous, and my day job, we've supported this since it was changed from a majority vote threshold to a 2/3 vote back in September of 1995 by the state Supreme Court. The decision was actually VTA versus Carl Guardino. The reason I ask if there's a particular reason why now, in 20 years of private polling on this, I've never seen a poll that voters would approve it if it were placed on the ballot. Is there fresh data that anyone knows of that the timing might be right for this type of a measure to be placed on the ballot?
Commissioner, I'm not aware of any information on that, and I would have to ask the author's office why he has introduced it this year. I think staff was trying to be consistent with what the commission has done in the past. I think that it is important that the commission, to the extent they can, be consistent in their messaging. But as you pointed out, and of course this was introduced before SB1 passed, and we are in a different world now, and there are political sensitivities to be concerned with for sure.
Sure, and I, again, my day job and as a commissioner, I support our legacy position. I also love Don Quixote, the musical, but tilting at windmills isn't that productive unless we're seeing different polling than we've seen in the last 21 years.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's pull that one back, and we'll bring it back. I'm sorry?
We can monitor.
Okay, and we'll just monitor that bill. Well, if we're going to just go ahead and do it on monitor, we don't need a separate vote then.
No. And with that, I would support staff's recommendation, pulling back on SCA 6.
But taking positions as staff recommended on the others, and I would second that.
We've got a motion by Lucy, a second by Carl. Any further questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, item 15 actually is going to be our workhorse today. We've already got 9 speakers. I think I've seen somebody else come up, so that's 10 speakers.
Yeah.
So this is what we're going to do, and I need the commissioners to pay attention.
We're paying attention.
We're gonna get our staff report.
Thank you.
Then we're going to have the speakers. I want the commissioners to take a blank piece of paper and hold the questions. So if all the speakers would remain in the general area, and then the questions from the commission will come after the speakers have finished. So we don't get into this ongoing dialogue for each speaker. And remember, Whip and Zip is in progress. So if somebody's already said something, all you need to do is say, I agree with them. All right, we'll start out with Stephen Patchen. Oh, I'm sorry, staff report. Boy, I'm really pushing this out.
You go from whip to staff, the zip to staff.
That was the most I've been zipped in a long time.
Mitchell, it's all yours.
Commissioners, tab 15 is implementation plan for SB1. This is an action item. There is a replacement item that you should have received, which contains a couple of updates. In approving SB1, the legislature provided additional funding to and increase the Commission's role in a number of existing programs and created new programs for the Commission to oversee. The SB1 implementation plan outlines staff's recommendations relative to the development of guidelines for the programs created by SB1 and the existing programs that will receive additional funding through SB1. To kick off our implementation efforts, as has already been mentioned, the Commission will hold a workshop on June 8th and 9th. The first day of the workshop, we hope to hear from the legislature and the administration and have panel discussions with a number of our partners. On the second day, we'll have a dialogue with interested parties about the individual programs in SB1. In addition to funding much-needed investments, SB1 also provides for additional accountability. As stated in the bill, this act represents a balance of new revenues and reasonable reforms to ensure efficiency, accountability, and performance for each dollar invested. SB1 further states relative to the road maintenance and rehabilitation program, which includes funding for the SHOP and local streets and roads, it is the intent of the legislature that the Department of Transportation and local governments are held accountable for the efficient investment of public funds to maintain public highways, streets, and roads, and are accountable to the people through performance goals that are tracked and reported. Recognizing the emphasis SB1 places on accountability, staff intends to incorporate measures in the guidelines for the individual programs that promote efficiency, accountability, and performance. I'll now go over at a high level the proposed implementation plan by program, noting that the timelines in the plan are intended to be a guide. We will update those timelines during the guideline development process and look to expedite the timelines whenever possible. First, the active transportation program. This will receive $100 million per year. Staff recommends that this funding be made available to already programmed projects that can be delivered earlier than programmed, or for projects that applied for funding in the 2017 active transportation program, but that were not selected for funding. We anticipate bringing guidelines for this funding augmentation to the Commission in June for adoption. SB1 creates the local partnership program, which will receive $200 million per year. The guidelines for this program must be adopted on or before January 1st, 2018. SB1 provided relatively little guidance for this program, but the administration has proposed a trailer bill language which would clarify the agencies eligible for this program and expand the purposes of the funding beyond road maintenance and rehabilitation to include other transportation improvements. Rather than making this a purely competitive program, staff recommends implementing the local partnership program as a 75% competitive, 25% formula program. We believe that this split will recognize the benefits of a competitive program while still providing incentives to local agencies to enact taxes and fees to fund transportation investments. We anticipate bringing draft guidelines to the Commission in August. SB1 creates new responsibilities to the Commission relative to local streets and roads apportionments, estimated to be $1.5 billion annually. These responsibilities include developing guidelines, reviewing project lists, reporting to the State Controller's Office, and receiving reports on completed projects. We anticipate bringing draft guidelines to the Commission in August. The Solutions for Congested Corridors program is a new $250 million program to fund projects designed to achieve a balanced set of transportation, environmental, and community access improvements within highly congested travel corridors throughout the state. Commission responsibilities include developing guidelines, holding public hearings, reviewing corridor plans, scoring project nominations, programming projects, and allocating funds to projects, monitoring program delivery, and reporting to the legislature. We anticipate bringing draft guidelines to the Commission in December. SB 1 significantly expands the Commission's oversight responsibilities for the SHOP, including the allocation of funds for support staff, project review and approval, and convening public hearings prior to the adoption of the SHOP. The Commission is also responsible for monitoring Caltrans's performance and progress towards accomplishing the specific goals set out in SB 1 and other targets or performance measures adopted by the Commission. Draft interim guidelines for both the SHOP and the Asset Management Plan are on your agenda today. SB 1 stabilizes funding for the STIP. The impact of this will be included in the 2018 STIP fund estimate and incorporated into the 2018 STIP. Approval of the fund estimate assumptions is later on the agenda. Staff will be bringing guidelines to the Commission in draft form in June. SB 1 creates the new approximately $300 million per year trade corridor enhancement account to fund corridor-based freight projects nominated by local agencies and the state. Trailer bill language was recently released to incorporate this funding and federal freight funding into a single program. Because these changes would significantly impact the guidelines for the California Freight Investment Program that are being presented later on the agenda, staff will initiate additional workshops to revise the guidelines. We anticipate bringing updated draft guidelines to the Commission in December. In addition to funding existing programs and creating new programs, SB 1 sunsets the Traffic Congestion Relief Program. Staff's proposed plan to close out this program is included under a separate item on your agenda today. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jim.
Mitchell, on the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, I think that timeline is too long. Is there a way we can tighten that up and get these programs adopted well before August of 2018? We've got 4 or 5 months just in workshop developing guidelines.
Yes, sir. We can shoot for getting program adoption in June 2018.
Yeah, or before.
Or before.
I'd like to see, May to get something out on the street.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, going into speakers. Stephen, you're going to be up first. I got the stopwatch going here. You have 3 minutes. Lucy's going to raise this little yellow thing right here when you got 1 minute left, and do not get on her bad side.
All right,
not.
I will not do that.
I am tequila
Thanks for the warning.
Go.
On behalf of again, my name is Stephen Patchen with the Southern California Association of Governments. On behalf of SCAG and the 6 county transportation commissions that collaborate on the development of the Southern California Regional Active Transportation Program, I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on the proposed 2018 Active Transportation Program. The newly adopted State of California Transportation Bill will help us reach our goals even faster and ensure we can fund the types of projects that will result in catalytic change. The SCAG region supports the proposed strategy to award 2018 Active Transportation Program funding. The strategy will extend the 2017 ATP impact by increasing active transportation investments to a degree unrivaled by any state in the country. However, to ensure that we continue to fund the highest quality projects, we would request that the CTC provide the flexibility for MPOs to establish a process for selecting new projects to receive a portion of the 2018 ATP funds should we find that projects on the lower end of our contingency list are not well positioned to move forward. Again, I want to thank you for consideration of our request and to also thank you and your staff for your commitment to enhancing the ATP each year. We look forward to continuing to work with you in implementing the 20 ATP. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Patricia Chen and then Jeannie Ward Waller. Patricia? There she is.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Patricia Chen with LA Metro.
Okay, are we picking up now? Okay, I'm Patricia Chen with LA Metro. And of course, we're very grateful for SB1. And thanks and praise also to Commission staff and Caltrans on their early groundwork for implementation. And we'd like to join in asking that the proportion of formula and discretionary funds under the local partnership program be further considered through the guidelines workshops before Commission action on that. We find that competitive programs work well when there are also flexible formula funds to support them by providing leverage and ensuring project budget integrity. In terms of efficiency, we'd like to point out both the applicant staff and consultant resources that go into the discretionary applications, and also the CTC, Caltrans, and statewide volunteer panel time that goes into reviewing them. We thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Jeannie Ward-Waller, and then Brian Lindblad.
Good morning, Commission. Jeannie Ward-Waller with the California Bicycle Coalition. I want to thank staff for putting this plan out quickly and appreciate all the work they have ahead of themselves to get all the program guidelines for all these programs out over the next 6 months or so. It's going to be an impressive effort, and as a stakeholder who regularly participates in your guidelines, I think I'll be spending a lot of time with Mitch and your staff, and so I just want to appreciate in advance how much work they'll be doing. I think my comments, I'll just sort of make a couple of things generally across the programs and then talk about a couple of specific programs and try to stay concise. I think, want to stress the importance of accountability on performance across all the programs, making sure that we're meeting our state goals for climate change and reducing VMT and greenhouse gases, especially with the competitive programs. Also want to just mention, I think that make sure we're meeting equity goals is really important as well, addressing air quality and environmental justice in low-income communities, and appreciate that staff with Executive Director Branson have been reaching out to some of those stakeholder groups, and hope there will be a coordinated effort to make sure those folks are involved in the guidelines for all of these programs. On the SHOP program and the local streets road repair funding, we really appreciated that there was language in SB1 that talked about complete streets and incorporating advanced materials and technologies. We look forward to working with staff on those issues. I think that's really important. On the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, I know there was a change to the staff recommendation and the timing there. We appreciate that there will be continued work on the guidelines following the direction that will come out of the legislature in the budget trailer bill. We want to continue to strengthen the performance requirements on that program to ensure that the goods movement improvements that we're investing in are also accompanied by investments in improving air quality, reducing VMT, and community impacts. Thank you. We sent a letter to staff, and I think that got in a little late, so we look forward to working with you more on that. Finally, on ATP, of course, we're really thrilled that there will be more money going to that program, and we support the staff recommendation to get the funding out really quickly to good projects in Cycle 3. I also just want to support SCAG's comments as well in terms of giving the MPOs a little bit of flexibility and making sure that their funding is also going to really good projects. So thank you.
Thank you. Brian Lindblad, and then Kristen Pauling.
Good morning, members of the commission. My name is Bryn Lindblad.
Bryn.
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 Good morning.
I apologize.
It's okay, happens often.
You get an extra minute.
Wow. Great, I'll keep that name then. Good morning. My name is Bryn Lindblad, Associate Director of Climate Resolve, a nonprofit based in Los Angeles, focused on climate change solutions. I probably don't need to tell you folks that transportation is still our largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and to boot, other harmful air pollutants that continue to provide serious public health impacts in our environmental justice communities. And so just kind of want to remind you that our infrastructure investments that we make can either unlock new possibilities for alternative modes, or it can reinforce the dominance of car culture, which is so prevalent in our state. And so as someone whose primary mode of transportation is the bicycle, I will tell you, I feel downright marginalized on our streets. They are not safe. The routes are fragmented, circuitous. The air contains particulate matter, which is not good for my respiratory health. The urban heat island effect is exacerbated by our asphalt on our streets, which is further adding to discomfort of road users, for people waiting for the bus or walking or biking, and also poses serious public health harms. So I congratulate you on SB1. This is a celebratory moment, and some much-needed resources to address some of the issues with our transportation sector. But I also urge you to use those resources to rectify some of the existing harms that our transportation sector is causing to communities. And so I realize we're not getting into performance criteria yet on how those program dollars are doled out. But I do think it's important that multimodal staff expertise is a part of that process from the get-go. So staff that's keenly aware of our state VMT reduction goals and strategies to meet those objectives, that understands the multi-benefit potential of well-thought-out projects to help communities adapt to climate change impacts, staff that know how to apply equity analysis to prioritize projects that meet the greatest need out there, and also staff that firmly believes in the advantages of robust public participation and are committed to utilizing engagement methods that really respond to and utilize feedback from diverse stakeholders. I think we can use the example of the RTP and CTP guideline process earlier this year as an example of how not to run public participation processes. As someone who's tried to engage in that process, I can tell you it was rather frustrating to have an outside consultant just kind of say, thank you, we've received your comment, it'll go in the log. There were workshops that spanned over 2 days, so it was quite difficult, and those two processes were running simultaneously, so it was quite difficult to cover. So would really urge you to pay special attention to how you schedule the workshops in a way that encourages broad participation, maybe trying to run the workshops for multiple programs on the same day, maybe trying to not take up more than one day, say every 2 weeks, and also really get expertise in the room that can substantively present initial ideas and really engage with feedback as it comes in. So these guidelines, it's an opportunity to make sure that we're funding the right kind of projects that really help us meet our state greenhouse gas emission goals, and to do those projects right in a multi-benefit way that helps us adapt to climate change impacts. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
You
Chair?
Stay close, because after the speakers, Secretary Kelly has some questions for you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, are we taking questions now, or are we waiting?
No, after.
Thank you, sir.
Kristen Pauling, and then Adrian Cardoso.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kristen Pauling. I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council, and I'm here to thank you, and again, like other folks have been saying, celebrate SB1's passage for many of the issues under your jurisdiction. We're excited to engage in a process that we expect will transform our transportation system in a way that's fitting for California's present and our future. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to lay the groundwork for spending resources in a way that advances a quality of life that I know my generation is so excited to see and truly expects, and doesn't hinge on driving alone in a personally owned automobile. We're really quite excited about that. I would point out some overarching things and themes and reference the Climate Resolve's comments and also California Bicycle Coalition's comments, and expand on some of those. I appreciate the staff's inclusion of the environmental themes pointed out in SB1 in the staff report, and encourage the CTC to establish performance metrics in keeping with those themes. We also recommend that CTC bring on any consultant or additional staff needed in VMT reduction as we build out each of these guidelines, especially I'd say for the Congested Corridors program. That's a really exciting opportunity here that we're quite excited to engage on, but would recommend that we really have that VMT reduction angle going into the process. And to establish innovative performance metrics. There's a lot of good research emerging on that issue now. Secondly, I'd also comment on the robust public participation process that I think SB1 demands. I'll point out some examples. Bryn, who just spoke, is on LA Metro's Policy Advisory Committee that they established after Measure M passed to get robust engagement and recognize that other partners have more opportunities to reach into the communities and get direct feedback. And then the Air Resources Board Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, another good model that's really open dialogue in a way that hasn't happened before at that agency. So would encourage those models to be on the CTC's mind as these programs get started. And also would just like to point out that they're here in the audience today, but point out that the cities and the regions and even the state has its VMT reduction goals in place. I mean, the city of LA yesterday was just touting how they're really excited to get towards their 35% mode split of all non-auto related trips. And that's a big priority for the mayor, just as one example. And SCAG's, of course, 18% VMT reduction goal. So the cities are out there and quite excited about moving towards a new model that frees up our resources for something different and something exciting that we all expect. So, and the Air Resources Board has also kind of done a roundup of what it would take to implement a lot of these goals. It's just reducing VMT 1.6 miles, vehicle miles traveled a day per Californian. I think that's a really achievable goal.
Excuse me. We need to wrap it up.
Oh, I didn't see your flag. Yes, so that's my last point. I think 1.6 miles is, we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian Cardoso, and then Kenneth Cow.
Good morning, Chair Alvarado and Commissioners. My name is Adrienne Cardoso. I'm with Orange County Transportation Authority. OCTA is encouraged by the opportunities that we all now have to improve transportation across the state due to SB1. We look forward to working with you, your staff, CalSTA, Caltrans, and our local agencies to deliver these new programs. My comments are similar to those of LA Metro, but slightly different. Today we are asking that you reconsider the staff proposal to limit the formula portion of the local partnership program to 25%. We understand that the Commission's goal, consistent with the legislation, is to deliver programs and projects considering efficiency, transparency, and accountability. This is entirely possible to do through a formula program, as we have learned through our own Measure M transportation sales tax program, which provides formula funds to our local agencies. By asking our local agencies to focus on a plan to maintain their assets, by preparing a report on their progress, and by providing them with a steady, reliable fund source, they are in a better position to prioritize important transportation projects in the most efficient way possible. The partnership program is an opportunity to directly partner with the state. By making 75% of the program competitive, it makes it impossible to plan for these funds as part of our regional long-range plans and short-term capital projects. We encourage the CTC to consider a funding division between formula and competitive funds that allows for better planning, predictability, and partnership with the state. We would suggest that 95% of the SLPP program be distributed by formula, similar to the very successful Proposition 1B state-local partnership program that we all supported a few years ago, including the regional agencies. We hope that you will reconsider the staff proposal to only provide 25% of the partnership program through a formula distribution. At a minimum, we ask that you defer this decision until a later time when more research can be done on this issue. Thank you for your consideration. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Kenneth, and then Andrea Zurich.
Thank you, Commissioners. Kenneth Cow with MTC, here representing the regional agencies. I did want to talk about the local partnership program. There was a very lengthy discussion at the RTPA meeting yesterday about this, and the regions support a different split between the competitive and formula programs than what staff recommends. The LPP is very similar to the Prop 1B SLPP program, though it's not specifically referenced. The LPP still provides incentives to agencies for the approval of voter-approved taxes, and the formula funding provides stable funding that agencies can count on. Putting together applications requires significant staff and other resources, and there are a lot of other significant competitive programs that will still remain competitive, including the Congested Corridors Solution, ATP, and the Trade Corridor Enhancement Account. The regional agencies therefore request reconsideration of staff's recommendation of the formula and competitive split, and to increase the formula share similar to, or closer to the SLPP, or similar to what Adrienne said, to defer decision until a later date. I did want to mention two other things that I didn't mention in my regional report. First, on accountability, the regional agencies are committed to clear and transparent expenditures of SB1 funds, and will work with the state to ensure accountability. And second, on the process, the regions would also look at re-examining the current delivery processes. Those are allocations, deadlines, extensions, to find common sense efficiencies to lessen CTC, Caltrans, and local agencies' workload while still delivering accountability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Andrea, and then Virginia Mendoza.
Good morning, Chair Alvarado and Commissioners. My name is Andrea Zurek. I'm with San Bernardino County Transportation Authority, and I appreciate the opportunity to also address you on the proposal for the local partnership program. We are also concerned about the proposed 75-25 split between the competitive and formula funds. A critical component of a sales tax measure is the development of the expenditure plan, which communicates to the voters how you intend to spend those sales tax funds. These expenditure plans set the eligibility for the use of these funds, and I want to focus on eligible uses because expenditure plans vary from county to county. Our county has 3 different expenditure plans depending on the area of the county in which you reside. A competitive program will likely be designed to favor a certain type of project, and we're concerned that setting aside such a large percentage of the program funding may limit the ability of some agencies to compete because they won't have the measure or developer fees eligible to meet that use of the funds. This negates the desire to reward or incentivize that's inherent to this program. Therefore, we're requesting that the Commission delay action on the distribution methodology of the local partnership program so that we can continue to work with CTC staff to further consider the implementation of this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Virginia, and then Luke McNeil Caird.
Good morning, Virginia Mendoza representing the Imperial County Transportation Commission. I would first like to thank the commissioners and staff that participated at the town hall meeting last month in our county. Thank you very much for that. And secondly, I would just like to thank, we're very thankful for SB1 and for the opportunity that the state local partnership program offers to us as a self-help county. We understand the need to support competitive processes. However, we would like the Commission to consider how smaller populations, such the ones in our county, can compete and share in the benefits of the SLP program. Thank you for the time.
Luke, and then Keith Dunn.
Good morning, Commissioners. Luke McNeil Caird with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. And I'll say PCTPA is very encouraged by SB1 funding, but we'd like to leverage this funding as much as possible. And as an aspiring self-help county, I'd like to comment also on the local partnership program and the split between 75% competitive and 25% formula. As part of Placer's sales tax measure on the November 2016 ballot, it was one of the key educational points to our constituents is that by getting a local sales tax measure, we will be able to get more state funding. Unfortunately, we came up just short of the 2/3 majority at 64%, but we're looking at 2018 and 2020 already. And it would go a long way if we would have a lot more formula funding, very similar to the Prop 1B, so that we could keep the support that we have at 64% and gain on that. And so we would request that you delay this decision and maybe make it part of the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, and then Joy Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, Chairman, and Commissioners. Keith Dunn, Executive Director of Self-Help Counties. I apologize for being a little tardy this morning, but appreciative of Sarkis delivering our report. I am here to comment about the state local partnership program as well. We would like to say thanks to the legislature and the administration for putting together SB1. We think it's a great package. We're excited about the state local partnership. We are concerned, however, as you've heard from others, about the proposed split that's coming forward, and I'm going to try and take it from a little different perspective. We like to talk in the legislature and in our local communities about promises made and promises kept, and largely we're able to do that because of our expenditure plans, which build predictability into projects. Predictability in projects allows us to go out and do planning and deliver these projects on a timely manner, as is expected by our voters who've given us the ability to go out and raise revenues to deliver priority projects for them. Each project that's in an expenditure plan has been blessed by the community as a priority. That's why it's made the list. There's a lot of outreach that goes into those programs that build the support to get to that 2/3 vote, which is, we all know, is extremely difficult. We'd ask that we delay any decisions on putting in a formula today that focuses on competitiveness. We think it is discouraging for new self-help counties. They're not able to talk about this added incentive as they go out and educate their voters. We also think that it's not in the best interest of some of the smaller counties, which you've heard from today, that aren't able to compete as much with what may be perceived as a different priority project. There's costs and application and different processes. Prop 1B, which had a formula-based 95%, 5% competitive program, I think we all would agree was extremely successful. We can utilize that model. That would be our recommendation moving forward as we discuss these guidelines, to hit the street, to provide predictability in project delivery, and to put this money to work as soon as possible. And really that's our goal. As all of you know, the faster that we can get out and fund these projects and have a planning phase that lines up constructability, we're going to save dollars and put Californians to work and improve our infrastructure. So we would ask you delay any action on this item today. We look forward to participating with you in these discussions moving forward. We think it's in the best interest of Californians to have a more formulaic process. It provides certainty in the planning process. We have a track record of success. We like to say promises made, promises kept. We think that Prop 1B, there's not a better example to follow, and we don't need to go and reinvent the wheel at this point to deliver these projects from our perspective. And we thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Joy Williams, and then Suzanne Smith.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Joy Williams with Environmental Health Coalition. EHC is a 37-year-old nonprofit environmental justice organization that works in the San Diego and Tijuana communities. We're also a member organization of the California Cleaner Freight Coalition. We work in traffic and freight-impacted communities, including those adjacent to port cargo terminals and border communities. These communities are simultaneously more transit-dependent and need more investment in public transportation and active transportation, as well as to ensure that all capacity increases in transportation are done in a way that reduces air pollutants and greenhouse gases and provides local benefits. We support the delay of the adoption of the California Freight Investment Program guidelines to allow for additional workshop and development of those guidelines, and we thank you for taking that action today. Regarding SB1, we support the inclusive process that staff has proposed for development of the guidelines for these sets of programs. To be fully inclusive, we recommend that the workshops be held in all regions of California and at times and places that allow residents of disadvantaged communities to attend and to provide transportation as appropriate. The Commission has received extensive commentary from community environmental justice and transportation justice organizations on guidelines for freight funding. We recommend that similar principles be incorporated into SB1 guidelines, and in particular, all projects must reduce negative community and environmental impacts. And we second the comments made by previous speakers on effective and innovative ways to do this. We also recommend that in evaluation of competitive projects based on greatest benefit, that the costs and benefits to the near roadway and freight impacted communities be evaluated separately, in addition to the costs and benefits of the region as a whole. A given project could be very beneficial for a large area, but have severe impacts on one community. So it's important to look at those separately. Project planning must also include meaningful engagement with local communities. And with that, we look forward to working with you on development of the SB 1 guidelines, and thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Suzanne Smith, Sonoma County Transportation Authority. Commissioners, appreciate the opportunity to offer a couple of observations for what they're worth. Commissioner Gilmetti suggested one of the programs be advanced in terms of the timeline for the guidelines and the selection of the projects. Fully agree with that and appreciate the aggressive timeline that the Commission is taking with the guidelines. No easy task for staff or your partners, but we need to get the projects out on the street. In that same line of thinking, though, the more competitive programs you have, the more guidelines, the more process, I start to worry a little bit about how we get the right project selected quickly and out on the street. I do think the opportunity for this state-local partnership program to be less competitive and more formulaic could help in getting more projects done quickly because it will provide the funds to the locals who can program it rather quickly. A different observation that I wanted to mention is related to partnerships with Caltrans and the Commission on delivery. There's going to be a huge and much needed attention spent on the shop, and that's going to be fantastic. But I think we also want to try and make sure that we're doing a good job on our side and on the state side in ensuring that the other programs and the projects that are in the pipeline already are getting attention as well. So balancing that workload and ensuring we have innovative ways to work together as partners to get projects out on the street is an opportunity. So it's an exciting time, and look forward to the coming months and the multiple workshops and guideline edits and track changes and all of that stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Secretary Hattie Kelly had a question for Ms. Lindblad.
Mr. Chairman, it wasn't so much a question. I just wanted to make a couple observations. Before I did, though, I did want to ask one process question of the Commission staff, if I could. Just a point of clarity, I'm uncomfortable on the first day that we're talking about implementation of SB 1, how many times I'm hearing the word delay from the audience. So I just want to ask, if you adopt the implementation plan now, you would still use your guideline and workshop process to work through issues like the split between formula and competitive program, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So there's no reason to delay the implementation part today.
That's correct. At this point in time, though, with the local partnership program, we do seek the Commission's input and advice and recommendation to staff on moving this program forward as a competitive and formulaic program. And to the greatest extent we receive guidance from the Commission today, that will allow us to move forward on the guideline process without being bogged down, as that is the primary discussion. The whole goal today as staff is to set forth a plan in action. We will begin guideline development in June, and we need to request that everyone that will participate in this process will attempt to work with us and work with us under the same level of urgency. But we do see that, and I'll let Mitch speak to this, but we do see that the competitive element in the program will help us to achieve those, better measure and align the funding and achievement of the statewide goals and objectives that we all share.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to make an observation based on some of the prior comments. I think one of the big challenges that we have in California today is moving forward on a transportation program that improves mobility, improves the condition of our assets, and at the same time achieves important environmental and air quality objectives, and particularly in the era of climate change. And I appreciate the comments from folks who have come up and pointed out those issues, but I want to say that there's something about SB 1 that I think should not be underappreciated or acknowledged in terms of the balanced approach the bill took to these challenges we have in transportation. And I want to just point out a couple of those elements. The first is that SB 1 had the largest single investment in public transit in any funding package to ever come out of the legislature. It doubled the amount of money going to the active transportation program, which now makes California, I think, the largest investor in bike and ped facilities of any state in the country. The corridor program, the congested corridor program, the idea and the concept behind that is to not do business as usual when it comes to congestion, but to look at best practices around the state, where regions and locals have taken the lead. San Diego's a fine example of a more comprehensive approach to congested corridors and providing options for travelers in those corridors that give them better choices than simply driving a single occupant vehicle, good public transit choices, but a broad corridors approach to that congestion challenge. This bill sets the stage for the state to be a good partner with regions who are taking that kind of creative approach to the program. This bill included planning grants in it to assure that we are partners with our regions and local governments in their efforts to plan for the future and accommodate growth in a way that achieves important greenhouse gas emission benefits. And there's, $25 million a year in the bill to help support those planning efforts at the regional level. Finally, and I think something that has been completely underestimated about the bill, 2/3 of the revenue generated by this bill is for fix-it-first activities. And that's a reflection of both the state of California not touching the gas tax for 30 years and having our assets fall into poor condition or not good enough condition for the public. And that kind of effort on fix-it-first, which is generally non-expansive stuff, and getting things in good condition and incorporating things like complete streets in those improvements is good for all modes of travel, transit, bike, ped, and cars. And so I just think too often, I've been messing around in transportation policy for 23 years, and too often the conversation is us versus them, on bikes versus cars, transit versus whatever. And I just want to say that the bill, and one of the best elements of the bill that was a difficult effort, is its comprehensive and balanced approach to meet our overall challenges. And I think the bill does a fine job of that. So I wanted to say that because I think nobody is ignoring the broad sense of challenges that we have in transportation, but the bill gives us a shot to achieve many of those things. So I just wanted to comment on that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very good. Well said. Brad?
Well, I guess I'm on the state and local partnership on the 75-25%. I mean, we're looking at, we've got some trailer bill language, who knows exactly if any words will be changed anywhere. But would it really change dramatically to not decide the exact percentage today and start our first workshop is scheduled for the 9th? And so then we could pick the percentage after the
Actually,
first
I think
workshop?
what it'll do is that'll start the conversation, because it's coming back, and we can always amend it as it comes back. We need to start the conversation.
At a certain percentage?
75-25, and then we'll go from there. Carl, did you have something?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you. A couple of things. The folks who spoke, could you all stand for a moment? First, thank you for carving out time to come all the way to San Diego and be with us today. I think one of the strengths of this commission and our incredible staff is the inclusive nature of our stakeholder process. They're to be commended for what a great job they've done, at least on my 10 years, having the honor to serve on this commission. And I'm going to reflect that really quick, too, because many of you, please stay standing for a moment. It's good exercise, stretch your legs.
Simon says.
Yeah. Many of you started your comments with, congratulations as we celebrate SB 1 today. And one of the cool things about the democracy I just want to show, how many of your organizations supported SB 1? It's less than half. And yet you all started in such a respectful way of congratulations, we're celebrating SB 1 today. It underscores that we are now going to do our best to implement this together. Now, many of us spent 2.5 years fighting to get this passed, and it was discouraging for many of us, especially those of us who are bike advocates and peddle what we preach and are environmental leaders and take that very seriously, that sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. As Secretary Kelly said, this was an amazing comprehensive package, and we barely won. We're celebrating today because of so much hard work by so many people in this audience and on the dais. So those who raised your hand, thank you. Those who didn't, thanks for being here to now participate in making this the very best policy that we can. Feel free to keep standing if you like standing, but otherwise please sit. The second item is, you know, part of life in being on this side of the dais is occasionally disappointing your friends. There are strong sides to be made of state-local partnership around a percentage of competitive and formulaic. And I come at this from an organization in my day job that led the first self-help county measure successfully in California, 1984, that has re-upped that measure in 5 different successful transportation sales tax campaigns in just that one county alone, and has helped numerous other counties to pass their measures. Of course, no one in this room has led efforts to pass more of these than my colleague Jim Arp, but we have had a hand directly leading numerous of these campaigns. I'm very comfortable with the 75-25. I think competition makes us better and is going to leverage the dollars further, and the 25 is there to make sure that each region, each self-help county or jurisdiction does get some formulaic share first back to you. So when I have to disappoint friends, I like to be upfront about it and just wanted to let you know.
Yvonne? Thank you, and I certainly appreciate the concerns that have been expressed for moving forward in a rapid manner. And I think that that's important that we move forward. At the same time, there are legitimate concerns that I hear expressed on how you do move forward if you have uncertainty in terms of your ability to be able to tackle and to get into these funds and to get them moving. So while I can understand why it's necessary to have something to start right now, and if it's 25, 75, I can understand that, but I do think there should be some certainty as to when there will be an evaluation of those numbers. Because there are people who are going to wait to move their projects knowing that they may have to stay in a competitive role rather than as part of a formula, knowing that within their area there will be certain funds available. So while I am willing to vote for the 25, 75 at what time it comes up, I would like to also know that there's going to be a time when it's reconsidered, and I believe that should be in a very short order. I think that we need to give some certainty to people, and we want to encourage them to move their projects, and they're going to move them if they know that there is a real possibility of getting the funds. So I would think that no more than 3 months is a reasonable time to reevaluate what is happening and how the 25-75 is actually being applied and whether or not there are people holding back. To me, it's very discouraging when people say, we'd just like to put it off totally rather than to go forward with the present formula. So I would agree we could start with that just for the purpose of getting things going, but it seems to me within 3 months, and certainly no more than 6 months, we should look at that formula and see what the impact is in terms of initiating projects.
Lucy.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree with most of my colleagues' comments here, and just a clarification though, Susan, my understanding is we're also pondering just having this get this more worked out within the workshop process itself, as opposed to the commission voting for a demarcation of 2575 today. Is that what we're saying?
We can't, and Mitch, do you want to take this? Because today, and I'll let Mitch respond, but just ultimately, we need to know from the commission, do you see that there should be a substantial portion of this program that would be dedicated to a competitive process as opposed to formula? The actual percentage we can work out through the guidelines. Mitch, do you want to?
So before you answer, because I think the other commissioners would like to hear your comments. For this commissioner, the single most important thing for me is how to get projects out on the street as quickly as possible. This was an incredibly difficult vote for many legislators. I'm very mindful of that. This is a very difficult, complex, and bitter pill for many of our residents who are going to be stuck with very high taxes that we know as professionals that we need, and it's been delayed well too long. The single most important thing for me is I don't want to hear any of our regions and transportation partners out there saying, we're not ready and we don't have projects to bring forward to you. Whatever the split is, whatever the workshop comes up with, it's got to have that good balance of being able to say, bring those projects to us now efficiently and quickly. And yes, I like competition. I think that makes sense to get the best, but if it means delay because we have to do a competitive process, I'm struggling with that when I think our legislative leaders need to be supported in getting projects out the door as quickly as possible with the passage of this bill. So I would just ask that be, it isn't just 75-25, it's also efficiency and effective projects that come to us, that be an important component of our workshop.
Jim?
Thank you.
Two quick questions, one for staff. What would be entailed, there's been a lot of references to how great Prop 1B's partnership program worked. What would be involved in pulling up what projects were delivered under that program and how well they were delivered? Because it was 95% formula? It would be.
Yeah, so it would not be hard to pull up the projects that were delivered through that program. I think there's, I'm not sure how one decides whether this was the best project at the time to do or something.
You're getting to my point too. Right. Yeah, there's two parts to this. One is expeditiousness, right, which I think the CTC has pretty good track record for moving the large amount of money that came through Prop 1B, and also picking good projects. And there were a lot of good projects that were kind of on a tier 2 level because there was more projects than money. But I would like to see that if it's not too much trouble to get that information together. And the second part does go to making sure that not only do we get projects out on the street, but we get the right projects out on the street as quickly as possible. I do remember, as so do many of you, during the Obama administration, the money that came in from the federal government, there was a huge amount of dust kicked up to try to get that money out to report on how many jobs were generated from it and so forth. And in some cases, in an effort to do that, there were some projects that were they got done, but they weren't probably the best project to get done in that area. And I think we want to see the best projects as well.
Christine?
Thank you. I'm hearing kind of two things here. I tend to favor the 75-25 split. I tend to. But there have been some good arguments brought up this morning that may impede timeliness of delivery. So one question for me would be, If indeed it slows down project delivery, is that more of a risk than the benefits of competition, efficiency, and moving projects along at the local level, on the street? And then the second thing is what Commissioner Burke brought up. How long will it take us to decide what we're going to support as far as the split goes? I want to see, the guidelines developed, and then when that happens, this is to the executive director, when the guidelines are complete, we'll know what our split is along a competition versus a local formula. And when do you predict that will take place? Because if it's true what Commissioner Burke says about the locals holding up projects to see where this break occurs, then I think we have to move quickly.
So Commissioners, staff is recommending to bring these in bring draft guidelines before the commission in August. But, part of the guideline, if you approve this implementation plan, the implementation plan as it's written includes language that this is a first attempt and that everything in here will be further refined through the guideline development process. As always, staff will continue to work with the stakeholders, those interested in these guidelines and the process on figuring out what makes the most sense. In no way do we want to delay important improvements that need to occur that will benefit California greatly. That is not our objective, but staff would just want to bring to your attention that both Senate Bill 1 and the trailer bill language, in neither place does it bring forward the Proposition 1B language that called for a 95% formula. There is no formula requirement. There's no language that would direct us to a formula program. And the concern that staff has at this time is that there's been a charge for the commission to carry out this program and to fulfill the intent of that legislation. And again, within the SB1 legislation, there are key goals and performance measures that need to be met with the funds. And so that is what we're working towards right now as staff, and we do look forward to working in partnership with everyone that will help us on that and figuring out what is the best percentage sharing as far as formula and competitive. But that would be a part of the guidelines process that will begin in early June. And then we would be bringing this information back to you for consideration. Actually, at the June meeting, we'll have more information than we do today.
With all the discussion about moving projects along, getting it out as soon as possible so that the members of the legislature and, most importantly, the public can see that we're delivering on the promises, can we get it done faster than August, maybe? Isn't that what we're all looking for? And I know you have to balance that with public input.
I'm going to let...
I've never seen you blink, Mitch.
Mitch, repeat after me. Weekends are overrated.
As Susan mentioned earlier, we have all the commission policy staff working on getting this bill's programs implemented. Given the level of discussion that we've had on this particular program, I don't see that we can bring something forward quicker than August because there's going to be a lot of discussion about where we fall. As Executive Director Branson mentioned, key to putting together the guidelines is direction about competitiveness. 75-25 guidelines that would be written look very different than 595. And so, that's a first thing out the gate that we're looking for. Whether the commission wants to go from 75 to 65 or 85, that's a commission decision. But having that general direction is really key in moving forward on the guidelines. And I think still August is probably the best we'll be able to do.
Okay. No further discussion? We need a motion?
I move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ark. The second was by Commissioner Madaffer. Further questions?
And
So
Mr. Chair, and staff would, with this motion, also take into the comments the commissioners have made today, correct?
Right.
Yes, great. Yes, thank you.
Any fur-
So just to clarify, so that means that when you come back in the next time you're coming back, August, I guess, we will have vetted through Jim Arp's request about what were the projects that we did with 95.5, and if there is a better consensus, because we've had a lot of people stand up today. So will we have a recommendation, or will we just proceed as if 75-25 is the where we're going, and then we work from there?
My understanding from what I'm hearing is that 75-25 would be the starting place. We are certainly hear what people have to say. We will see if, I'm not optimistic about extensive unanimity on anything other than a much, much lower percentage of a competitive program in terms of reaching consensus. How we can expedite the program, and we can certainly bring forward a list of what was funded with the state-local partnership much quicker than that.
Yeah, because we do have a meeting in June, so
Yeah.
perhaps we could have that information by the June meeting.
Yeah, that would be not a problem to generate as far as I know.
So, Mr. Chair, is then our your understanding, staff will be back at the June meeting with the report?
This is, you got to have stakeholder meetings. It's the same thing we did the last time.
Right.
And the last time was pretty successful. I'm feeling pretty comfortable with this. I mean, the agencies and everybody, and staff all sat down, they worked it out the last time, and I'm sure they're going to work it out this time. I feel very comfortable with this thing. It's not that we haven't done this before.
Right.
Any further questions?
Call for the question.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, let's see. It's 12:13. We'll take a lunch break, and we'll be back at 12:45. Is that enough time for everybody to eat?
Yes. We have food ready, so it should be okay.
Okay, 12:45.